I'm not obsessive in a like OCD way at all. And I'm not obsessive I don't think I'm obsessive unhealthy. I just I need to solve a problem once it gets into my mind, and I like going down rabbit holes.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you. You're hearing Rabbit by Four, featuring my guest, Nate Wood, on drums, bass, and keyboards. Born to a musical family in Southern California, Nate began his career at an early age, eventually gaining notoriety as the drummer of Knee Body. An exceedingly versatile instrumentalist, he's worked with artists such as Wayne Krantz, Donny McCaslin, Sting, and Chaka Khan. Nate has also released 3 albums as a singer-songwriter and engineers and produces for other artists. Although he has a gift for mastery when it comes to the mechanics of music, Nate imposes boundaries on himself with the aim of encouraging creative thought. He possesses a clarity of concept that transcends mere virtuosic gymnastics. I spoke to him in downtown Los Angeles. And now my conversation with Nate Wood.
My parents are both musicians, actually.
Cool.
And they're both still active. My father, my parents met in a band in the early 70s. They were both 19 or 20. My dad had this band called Honk, which was like a very famous Southern California band. They most famously wrote the soundtrack for this surf movie that was really big called Five Summer Stories. And then they toured a bunch opening for Beach Boys and Santana and stuff like that. And Tristan Bowden was the drummer of Honk. And so after that, my dad went on to play with Kenny Loggins and a bunch of kind of other people. And so I kind of grew up around music.
What about your mom?
She's a singer-songwriter. She sang a lot while we were growing up, but she was also kind of mothering while my dad was on tour kind of thing, So, but yeah, I mean, they're both playing all the time. They're gigging all the time still. So,
did you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger brother, and he's probably the most musically talented of the family, but he's not a musician.
Interesting.
I mean, he's he is a musician, but he's not a musician. He doesn't do it all the time. He goes in and out of fits and spurts of being really inspired to use GarageBand, and then he'll just put it aside for a while. But he's like a martial arts expert and does carpentry and stuff like that.
And were there just instruments lying around the house?
Yeah, pretty much. My dad pieced me together a drum set when I was 2 years old or so, before there were children drum sets, made a bass drum out of a 14-inch floor tom and put it in a wooden cradle because there was no way to
lift it up.
Yeah, there was no way to lift it up. And, gave me cymbals that were just literally pie plates. And I'm realizing now that I just still love the sound of those kinds of things, and that's probably why.
Well, now there's commercially available trashy sounding cymbals.
For a good 10 years, from 2000 to 2010, I always had one cymbal that sounded like that on my kit, and now I realize it's probably because of
It's the sound of home.
It's the sound of home, of my upbringing. Yeah. But yeah, then there were instruments all around too, guitars and pianos and stuff like that. And I could only practice drums until 5 p.m., and then my neighbors would come banging on the windows shut the hell up kind
really
of thing. Yeah. So, and to me, if I wasn't playing drums at 140 decibels, then I wasn't playing drums. You know what I mean? I didn't understand playing quiet, that was a valid way of playing drums. So if I couldn't just do this, then I wouldn't practice drums. So that's why I got into playing other instruments, because I could only practice for like an hour and a half a day.
Do you feel like your parents were good mentors musically for you as a child?
Absolutely, amazing mentors. The only misstep, and they'll take full responsibility for this, is they forced piano lessons on me at age 9, because there was an interim period in my pre-tens where I stopped playing drums. And I got back into drum, 5 years or so, 6 years I didn't play drums. And then I got back into drums around age 9. And it was very clear to my parents that I was going to be a drummer, because I'm just kind of a one-track minded person. And they could tell that's what I was going to do. So they're like, you have to take piano lessons. And their intentions were great, but they got somebody for me who I didn't understand the correlation between what I was learning on piano and like how it related to music. Like it was all technical and reading and stuff like that, and it was music that I didn't like, and I just didn't understand why I had to do this. So I didn't want to play piano at all until like a couple of years ago.
Right, it's kind of like learning grammar when you want to tell a story.
Yeah, exactly. And I was already like playing music and, like playing along with music and feeling what it feels like to be playing with a band, playing along with records and stuff like that. So eventually I got a guitar and started teaching myself guitar, and they're like, okay, you don't have to learn piano,
So what would your approach be if your kids were showing a similar
I would just be
interest in
completely
something?
hands-off, because I kind of think a lot of a kid's, like, it's all baked into their DNA. Like, of course, that might change if I had kids, but I feel like they're going to kind of do what they want to do. And some kids respond really poorly to parents kind of, I would probably just offer assistance if it was asked, but I would stay out of it otherwise. But it would also be really exciting, I think, to have kids and have them be into the thing that you love the most, which I think is what it was with my parents.
Did you ever want to rebel against them?
No, totally not. They're really super cool.
Yeah, but even super cool parents sometimes have rebellious kids. Do you feel like you just had a closeness with them that's maybe lacking in other people's relationship with their parents?
It's just, again, it was a genetic thing. It was a genetic predisposition where I saw early on, like, oh, I'm just the offspring of my parents, and I see both of their personalities in me so much that I appreciate it, and I can appreciate just the thing, like the fact that they've been alive longer than me and what they have to share, and they're doing the same thing I'm doing. My brother had a little bit of a rebellious streak. But
that's interesting, because it sounds like he's the most talented one in the family.
Yeah, he is, and not just with music. Like, I can only do music, but he can do a variety of other things really well. He's like an exceptionally good martial artist, and he kind of can do anything he puts his mind to. But he was the one who kind of rebelled probably most initially, and now he's come full circle. But anyway.
Sometimes I feel that the people that can do anything they can put their mind to get in their own way, and they can't figure out what to put their mind to.
Yeah, totally. That's definitely can be the case. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's the case with your brother, but I've seen it with other people.
I think it was with him, and he figured it out. Now he's doing great. But yeah. I think that would be a handicap in a certain way.
So when you were playing with your parents as a kid, were you proud of yourself?
Yeah, totally. I was proud of myself because my dad played with a lot of who were my heroes at the time. And so I was just happy to be amongst those people, and doing a good job for a 16-year-old, 15-year-old, And just it felt really good. It felt really natural and musical and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Did you feel like there was ever anything else you wanted to try with your life? Or did it seem like you were just going to be a musician?
Yeah,
No question.
I think it was like, around age 9 or so, it was just like, yep, this is what I'm doing, Because I would get into things when I wasn't playing music, and I would just obsess over one thing. Or it was like baseball or whatever for a certain amount of time and learn what I could about it. And then, music just became the thing. Like, oh, I've seen my parents pave the way of how you might make a living, even though that's completely changed now, of course. But and I have so many tools available to me. There's nothing else I can do. It's just like there's no choice,
Did you get more joy out of music than other things in life?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was a very socially reserved person, and I still am. But music was kind of the place where I felt the most at home, So.
It's a great way to meet friends and other people.
Yeah, I guess so. And a lot of my best friends are, the people that I play with all the time. So.
You said that you would get obsessed about other things like baseball for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Are you an obsessive person by nature?
I'm not obsessive in a like OCD way at all. And I'm not obsessive like, I don't think I'm obsessive unhealthy. I just like, I need to solve a problem once it gets in my mind. And I like going down rabbit holes, you know? So that's been, you know, like you said earlier, it can be a problem if you have too many things you can do, you know? And I have that problem within music because I can play a lot of instruments well. And I also mix and master records for people, and I've produced records and stuff like that. So my problem was going down too many rabbit holes within music.
You know, the paradigm we're living in now
Yeah.
Isn't as rewarding to people that are just great at one thing. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like helpful to be great at a few different things.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I agreed with that until maybe 10 years ago. And I agreed with that just based on my own experience because I was doing pretty well for myself, I think, compared to a lot of my peers for a long time because I was so diverse, you know? Like if I didn't want to go on the road for 8 months a year, I could just mix records or whatever, you know, which was great. But a lot of the people that I know who are really successful, my peers, they do just do one thing really well. And the thing about that is humans kind of have a short attention span for labeling people. And it's like, okay, I want to pin something on you so I can remember something you by
Right.
you know, with what you do. And I remember walking into a gig where I was singing my songs and playing guitar and walking by, or no, the drummer who was playing with me said he heard a bunch of people at the bar and they were like, oh, Nate Wood's playing upstairs. Oh, is he playing drums? Wait, I thought he was a bass player. Wait, I thought he was a producer. Wait, is that the same Nate Wood that mastered my record? So it was like 4 people all who were like, wait, he writes guitar and he writes songs on guitar and sings. Like nobody knew that it was all the same person. So like that's a very confusing narrative, even though they all knew my name. So that's what I realized at a certain point. Like, oh, I think it's actually better to just define yourself. I think.
So if somebody asks you what you do now, what do you say?
I just say I would point them to 4 videos. You know, to the 4 videos. That's what I would point them to because that's almost everything that I do encapsulated in little 4-minute segments, you know? So that's what I would say.
So for folks that don't know what 4 is, could you explain a little bit?
Yeah, 4 is a project where I play drums, bass, keyboards, and sing simultaneously. And I made a record that came out at the end of July, which was now a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And it's a collection of 10 songs of performances that are on YouTube that are all recorded in one take with no overdubs, no backing tracks, no click track. It's just me playing the song. Yeah.
And what inspired you to want to combine everything into that one outlet?
Well, first of all, I've been playing drums and bass at the same time since probably 2004 or 2005. And either with Kneebody, my instrumental band, or with singer-songwriters where I would also sing backup. So I'm used to multitasking such that it feels second nature to me. Like drums and bass at the same time is as easy for me as just playing the drums. But I never thought to make it a featured, like a way of showcasing my music until I saw D'Anthony Parks and Josh Dion do it with Techno Self and Paris Monster. And then it kind of like the light went off and I'm like, oh, I can just take the music that I make and just do it all myself.
So let's back it up a little bit. You kind of described learning an instrument almost like solving a problem before. What was your approach to learning how to play drums or learning how to play bass? Like, did you see it as a puzzle?
Not really. It's just a natural thing, and it still is a natural thing. And every time I try to do things that I think would be by the book, it doesn't work out. So for me, it was mostly just playing along to records. And then if I came across a technical limitation, I'd try to figure out what it was and try to solve it. But it was never through, books or anything. Like, I can't really read. I didn't go through any technical books for anything. I think I went through, like, advanced techniques for the modern drummer, but I didn't really understand why I was going through it, and I honestly didn't get anything out of it.
So someone just mentioned it, and you thought,
and I just got it, and I was like, maybe I should do
Yeah.
this, you know.
Yeah.
But I really just got things out of playing along to records, not even transcribing. I never transcribed. I just would play along and be like, kind of ape stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Mimic it. So I really appreciate the people who can be more diligent than I could, but I just couldn't do it. So, yeah.
Do you think that resulted in more originality in your approach?
I have no idea. I can't say that it does, actually. And I thought I used that as a defense mechanism early on because that's what you're supposed to do. And I thought it did result in more originality. But now I know so many great drummers in New York who did the opposite.
Sure.
Who can play every lick of Philly Joe, every, like, Tony solo, everything, you know, and they don't sound anything like any of those people. They sound just like themselves, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
I guess it just shows that there's different paths to the same place
Absolutely.
or to different places even.
yeah, there's no right or wrong, yeah.
Have you always felt comfortable as a musician or confident?
Yeah, I mean, it goes up and down because I think if you're trying to get better, then there's going to be things that you don't like about your own playing, and that can eat away at you sometimes, as it certainly has for me in certain periods.
What does it mean to you to get better right now?
I will hear something or I'll feel something that doesn't feel comfortable, and I'll just try to eradicate it somehow. Just some kind of technical or musical limitation. Try to figure out what it's coming from and try to stamp it out, you know?
Do you feel like you have the faculties to express the ideas that come into your mind?
Yeah, I do on the drums and on the bass, I think, and kind of on the guitar too. But and I'm starting to as four. Like the thing with four when I perform live is a lot of it is the songs it's all the songs on YouTube. But there's moments where I'm just improvising with the four instruments, and there are moments where I can actually just play what I'm hearing with all these instruments simultaneously. So that's the goal more and more as I do this project, is just to be able to improvise.
And then you went to CalArts to study music or something else?
Music, yeah.
But you didn't really work on reading or that kind of
CalArts
technical
just
stuff?
lets you do whatever you want. And
that sounds great.
It is great, but so when I was 17 and I graduated from high school, I was playing 8 to 9 gigs a week every day. Like that.
So
that
you were
summer,
making like a living.
I was making
at
a
that
killing,
point.
yeah, compared to any other 17-year-old. Just like 6 hours of music a day, you know. And it was before the smoking ban in California, so all my drums just smelled horrible. But yeah, I was just playing.
Man, I remember those days.
Yeah.
You'd have to take a shower when you got home.
Exactly.
At night. Ugh.
Yeah, it was terrible. But so when I got to CalArts, they were kind of like, yeah, you can already play. You're already doing what you want to do. Let's just hang out and jam or whatever. That was kind of my lessons, you know. And I got some structured things from some of the teachers, but they were kind of like, you can do it if you want, you know. And part of me wishes like they were like, no, learn piano or stuff like, you know what I mean?
Do you think that you would have responded to that?
I might not have, but even by force, I think I might have more tools, but maybe not actually. But anyway, what I got out of CalArts was I met Kneebody basically through CalArts, and that's just, I'm all where I am now because of that band, you know.
So what do you mean by that?
I mean, just I met them, and that completely became my identity, I think, is like I identified myself through that band. I was able to develop my voice as a drummer through that band, and that's carried over into everything that I do.
Some of the guys from that band didn't go to CalArts. They went to school in New York.
Only Adam,
right?
the keyboard player, went to CalArts, but they all moved out to LA at the same time. And Adam introduced me to all of them, and we started playing quickly thereafter. How
would you describe your creative role in that band?
It's completely a democracy. There's no overbearing personality in that band, and so I can contribute as much or as little as I want to, but not so little as to that the wheel stops spinning. You know, everybody has a job, so I have to mix and master the records and do other things. But I don't write for the band because I don't really hear instrumental music. But sometimes people would come in with drum parts, but most of the time I would just play whatever I want and play completely differently every night, and it was always fine. And that's just how that band is. We never really talk about how things are supposed to go. It just happens.
When did that band become central to your identity?
I mean, I probably 03 or 04, like when I joined again, because I was playing with those guys, and then I went on tour for 2 years in like a pop rock band. And
Which band?
It was this band called The Calling.
Okay.
They had one gigantic hit, and I was on tour during that time. And then when I came back, I started playing with those guys again, and it just felt like, oh yeah, this is kind of what I want to do.
When do you feel like that band became successful creatively?
I mean, successful creatively. I mean, I thought we were great in 2000.
Yeah.
I did. Like we had a. Well, I'll counter that by saying we had our first residency in 1999 at a coffee shop on a UCLA campus, and we were playing jazz. And Kavi was playing upright, and I was playing like jazz drum set, and it was some of the worst music I've ever been involved in my entire life. It never worked. It was just socially inept, terrible music that nobody could listen to. But then,
like you were trying to play standards?
Yeah, and play free and just try stuff like that, and it just didn't work. And then Ben Wendell got a residency at this place called the Temple Bar on the west side in 2000, and he was like, I think I want to call the same guys, and we'll just do, music that works in that room. I'll write some tunes that might work in a louder room. And so everybody kind of brought in tunes that were kind of more backbeat based, and Kaveh was playing electric. And the first night was killing, and it was just, every night was great. It was like, oh, this is it. This is what we're doing. So I thought it was always good after that,
And then eventually did you end up making a living from just that band?
Never, ever, 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 ever. Yeah, that band has been a fiscal disaster.
Why do you think that is?
Well, here's a secret of the jazz industry, which is that once you have more than 4 people in your band, it's very hard to pay people. Mm-hmm. The five is the number where it's just hard to make a profit, and that's just how it is, especially for a band who's getting off the ground. The other thing is I would blame us for not roughing it enough. I had a good career, as I said, when I was 17, so I didn't want to sleep on couches and make $100 a night or less for 3 years just to blow up and finally reap the rewards. I was like, I had good gigs that paid well, and I was like, well, tour.
As somebody who's done a lot of touring like that,
yeah,
it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to blow up.
It doesn't, and that's how I felt. So, and that's kind of how we all felt. So we're like, we're going to do this, and we really love it, and we're gonna give our all. But we also have a responsibility to pay our landlord, pay rent, and like eat and stuff like that. So we all had other gigs that were good and were hard to say no to. So we just kind of, we did it as much as we could, but no regrets. But that's just what it is. So it's been. That band doesn't really go on its own. We still have to push very hard for it to maintain, I think.
Today's episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Tackle Instrument Supply Company, manufacturers of exceptionally high-quality instrument bags crafted from canvas and leather. Tackle sent me some of their snare drum, stick, and cymbal bags, and they are, in my opinion, the most beautiful and elegantly functional instrument bags on the market. Explore their entire range of products at tackleinstrument.com.
What do you think about the most throughout the day?
It just depends. Like, right now I'm thinking about 4 a lot, like how to improve the live show, like what pieces of gear I need, like should I upgrade to a better suitcase? I'm really into headphones because I do a lot of engineering on the road, so I'm like thinking about the pros and cons of working in headphones, just stuff like that. It's just music stuff all the time, and just how to...
Do you worry about anything?
No, I don't.
Is it because you're always thinking about music stuff?
Yeah, and I'm kind of like I'm just generally pretty optimistic about things. So I feel like
You've always been that way?
yeah, I have, and it's because I have had a great upbringing, I think.
Yeah. Well, you got to see people make a living doing what you love the most.
Yeah, and my parents were great role models, and they're really happy together, and they love each other.
They're still together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
great.
yeah. They're like finish each other's sentences, like mentally sparring, like super smart people. So that's just my reality that I've lived in. So I just feel like I always have a support system, which is really nice. So for me, doing 4, I guess you're interviewing me, so I can talk about myself like this, but doing 4 was kind of a leap of faith because I'm not one to step out and be egocentric, and I don't necessarily think that what I do as a solo artist can succeed.
What do you mean by succeed? You mean financially?
Yeah, financially, like it pays for itself and then some, or whatever. And I have good jobs that I can do that pay for things, So
why do you think that is? Like, do you feel like you're less compelling as an artist than other people that you work for?
I don't. No, I think I'm as compelling easily, but it's such a tough road, and it's hard to have that period where there's nothing happening, where you're putting in a lot of work and you're not getting anything back, which I don't know, it's really hard to say that I've ever really had that with this project. I think 4 was kind of right away like, oh, this might actually work, but still, it's like, for me, this year has been, it's just an adjustment period of like, okay, I can't just fall back on the things that work for me. I have to push myself. Because I realized at a certain point, like, if I'm not pushing myself in this direction, then I'm not going to be happy for the rest of my life. So
when did you have that realization?
I think it came when I had kind of checked off a lot of bucket list things in terms of people that I want to play with and like things that I want to do. And I'd realized, like, kind of done this now, like, what's next? And I realized like, yeah, I want to push myself harder, and I want to make my own music a bigger part of that,
Did checking off the things on your bucket list, was that as satisfying as you had anticipated?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was? Okay.
Totally. Yeah.
Because lots of people I've spoken to, when they check those things off, it's almost like there's no there, and then they freak out.
Yeah, I mean, there is no there because you're still alive. Like, there's no there until you're dead.
Oh, is that right?
I think. Because everybody's just trying to, like, survive, and so you're always looking to the future, and if you're there, then you can't really survive. You're no longer swimming, you're just drowning.
What about, like, just floating on your back and appreciating the
environs? But you can still get eaten by something.
Yeah, that's true.
Or get sunburned and kind of,
or get skin cancer.
And also everybody else is swimming, so you're not gonna, it's always a race, and that's what's fun about humanity.
Do you think about music in a competitive way?
I don't. But part of why I moved to New York was because I thought that all my favorite drummers lived there, and I wanted to be around them and see them play and just feel what that level felt like, And so I feel like I learn a lot from all of them, and it contributes to what I do, whatever. I don't feel competitive. I feel more kind of like part of a community.
Did it take a while for you to become part of that community in New York, or did you already have inroads?
Not at all. I felt more accepted in New York immediately than I ever did in LA. Because Kneebody was better known in New York always. Like, that was always our best shows. We always, like, just took fire there. And so when I moved there, people already knew who I was, and I was like, oh, I can just play the way I want to play here, and it just felt really natural. I never felt that way in LA. I always felt like I was battling against my own impulses here. So, have
you ever doubted yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I doubt myself, like, when I'm about to cross over to the next plateau, the next, like, whatever, zenith or whatever. Sometimes, like when I was working on the first 4 video Rabbit, I was just like, this is so stupid. Like, why would anybody do this? And I'm old enough now to know, like, okay, that means this is something.
Yeah, that scary feeling.
Yeah, or just the, like, you're so stupid, Nate, for trying this. It was like, oh no, this is it.
Oh yeah, that's how I felt right before I hit upload on the first episode of this show.
Right.
And that's how right now I'm working on a solo album, my first one.
Yeah.
I'm like singing on and playing stuff,
awesome.
Everything.
Yeah.
And when I was doing the first vocal takes, I was like experiencing that really heavy self-doubt.
Right.
But then I learned that those things are actually bringing me the same intensity of joy that I got when I first started playing music with people.
Yeah.
That I felt was maybe lacking a little bit.
Right. And that's important to keep that fire, you know. It's like it takes work. Like that's the thing that a lot of people don't talk about. But music, keeping the inspiration in music can take work just like a marriage takes work, you know. Like even if you love your partner more than anybody in the world, you have to work at it to keep the fire going. And I think music is the same way. Now that's also why I'm not competitive, because if I hear something that blows my mind, I'm just like, I'm all in. I want to like know everything about it, you know. I don't want to be protective of my thing and be like, well, it's not as good as what I do because of XYZ, you know?
Right.
So.
How often do you find something that blows your mind?
I mean, kind of often it feels like. I mean, last year I found this guy, Chris Wiseman, who took me a few tries to really get into, and then something happened where I was painting my apartment with my wife, and we used one of those spray guns to spray Anyway, the paint got everywhere, and we couldn't sleep. Like, it was toxic, deadly in there. And I got like 2 hours of sleep one night, went outside, tried to catch my breath at like 5 a.m, and I just didn't have anything to do, so I started listening to Chris Wiseman again, and I'm like, oh, I get it. And it was like a total thing for me. So he's a completely fairly unknown Vermont-based singer-songwriter who released like 15 albums in the last like 6 years or something.
Wow.
And he's harmonically just all over the map, like insanely complex, very deep, really cool lyrics, all kinds of themes, you know, stuff like that. And then I'm really into this guy now, John Bapp. Have you heard of him?
I think I've heard the name, but I don't know what
I
he's
think
all
he's
about.
somebody who's people are just starting to talk about, but he lives in Dallas, and he makes kind of psychedelic neo-soul or something like that. I'm not really sure, with a lot of odd time signatures. And he's like one of the best drummers you'll ever hear, but he doesn't even really advertise that on his records. He plays all the instruments, and when he plays live, he plays guitar and sings. But he's really onto some shit. Like his newest record, he's doing all this weird microtonal stuff. That's kind of like, it's a Prince song in 7, but with this weird microtonal like undertone. But it's still super catchy. It's crazy. It's really cool. And he's super not famous, and I think he still works at Chipotle.
Wow.
But he's like so good. Anyway, so those are a couple, you know. And then I feel like a lot of my peers blow my mind, you know, like a lot of my best friends, you know. Like.
Well, yeah, I mean, I met you when you were playing with Donnie and Mark and that crew, and those guys are amazing.
They're all amazing, totally. And they're some of my best friends, and, you know, I learned so much from those guys. And playing with Louis Cole Day After Tomorrow, and I've known Louis since he was like a 19-year-old kid, and he's always blown my mind. Like, he gave me his first demo CD when he was 19 or 20. It was one of the only times that I've actually listened to one of those things. You know, a lot of times people give you things, and I'm just like, I don't have the energy for this, you know.
Yeah.
But I really liked Louis personally. He was just so funny and goofy that I put it in and was just like, oh, this is like genius shit. Like, right away, like even at that age, it was like, oh, this is serious. So anyway, yeah, I feel like, and that's what I wanted to have happen when I grew up, was just to be around people that I thought were like superheroes. So.
And you haven't been let down.
No, totally. It's always been like that since then, which is awesome.
I saw your smile fade. The joy was all washed away. You were incomparable on that final day. A rush of salt and despair, a menacing fall through the air, downward to the pool that God made where my soul will stay.
Earlier, you referred to the process of kind of maintaining passion in music as like maintaining a marriage. When did you get married?
8.5 years ago, something like that. We've been together for 13 years. Yeah.
Is your wife a musician?
She is, yeah. She's making a record right now, upstate New York. So, yeah. Yeah, she's touring more than I am now, actually. So.
Is it difficult to, you know, stay connected when you're both pursuing your own careers?
It's a little bit hard, but we are avid phone talkers. Like, we try to talk every day, and we'll average an hour a day if we actually get on the phone with each other, and that makes all the difference in the world. And,
Are you an avid phone talker
not
in general?
At all. I don't talk to anybody ever.
You called me before.
I know, but I'm very hard to get a hold of in general. Like I don't really text back. I'm just kind of like, but yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just have a lot of energy for my wife, and I don't have a lot of energy outside of that.
Right.
But I'm naturally getting more interested in people as I get older, or naturally getting more interested in being communicative. I don't know. These are all things you're not supposed to say about yourself, but
why not?
I don't know. Just like self-assessment or whatever. But I think it's also because I found a project of my own that I believe in, so I feel like I'm starting to kind of wake up a little bit.
You feel like you're learning about yourself by doing that project?
Yeah, definitely. Totally. Like when I feel like I've had a bad gig or X, Y, and Z is a small failure. I'm still at the beginning, but yeah, I'm learning a lot about myself.
Are you hard on yourself when you feel like you had a bad gig?
Yeah, super hard. But I've gotten easier. I used to be like deathly hard, but now it's I just know it's part of the process. And I just try to figure it out.
I also feel like I'm learning that being hard on myself isn't as productive as I thought. Like it's not necessarily the best way to move forward.
Yeah, and the thing that helps me with that is listening to music that isn't perfect. Like John Bapp and Chris Wiseman are two perfect examples of that. Chris records everything on a 4-track cassette tape, and his singing it's clear that he's just reading the words off the paper, and he'll sing it once or twice, and that's the song. He's not like, oh, I'm a little flat there. It's just like, I'm going to write another song tomorrow. Who cares?
Yeah.
And John Bapp kind of seems similar, even though his music is so fleshed out. A lot of it is just art, for art's sake, because it just came out, and he's not worrying about it. That's what it seems like. So listening to a lot of and I read an interview with him last night where he said, like, if you go too far into music, because he's also a visual painter and he paints like his covers and stuff like that, and he's like, if you go far too into it, you ruin it. And that's what I learned first as being a visual artist. But I find the exact same thing applies to music. So I completely agree with that. And this 4 project was exactly that. It was me trying to not go too far into it, because my solo records I have a tendency to go too far into. But if I'm playing everything at once, I can't go too far into it. It's like, I got a good take, that's it, let's move on.
Yeah, you have to
song.
embrace whatever limitations there are.
Exactly. Yeah, whether it's like what I'm capable of on any given instrument at any time, or just the limitations of physically what I can do, So.
Right. And like you mentioned before, you don't consider yourself to be a great keyboardist, but that doesn't mean that you still can't express interesting ideas.
Exactly.
And use those limitations to your advantage.
Right. And that I had that moment, like, 3 months ago when I started when I had some gigs booked, like, I got a festival gig like in 4 months and I don't have a live show yet. I better start learning these songs, how to play them all sequentially, because I only played them for the videos and then I didn't play them for a year and a half. And I'm like, will I be able to learn them quickly? Stuff like that. And I was like, no, let's take some time to really learn some jazz harmony on the piano and like really get deep into this. So when I'm doing it, I know what I'm doing. And then I did that for a few days and I'm like, what am I doing? I already have music.
Yeah, I have that same tendency to like feel like I'm qualified to make a statement.
And I think that's a scholastic approach, and it's just bullshit. And because I know that my ears are good enough to know what's good and bad to myself, and I'm going to work on that stuff as it comes, but in the meantime, I got to make a product, and that's what matters to me, So anyway, so that was like that realization of like, no, just, don't go too far into that process. Just keep working and put something out, and you don't really know how it'll change your life. This is what I'm just saying to you because I've put out a few records now, but you don't really know how it's going to change your life or not until you put it out, but something about you will change, like if you have expectations, or just the process of finishing something that means so much to you and then just putting it out in the world, it just really changes you in a way, I think. So,
do you feel like you were most vulnerable up until now putting out your singer-songwriter stuff?
No, because I kind of didn't. I hid that music. Like, I didn't really care if anybody heard it. It was really just an aside to everything else I was doing. And I felt passionate about it, but I didn't really put as much time into it as I should have. It's just every once in a while I'd get a fit of like, I got to
You mean
write
like,
a record.
but when you say should have, you mean maybe that was like a defensive thing? Like,
yeah, maybe, or it was that thing I was talking about before. Like, if I put energy into this, I kind of have to go all the way. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time and everybody's time, and I don't know if I'm ready financially or otherwise to do that.
Gotcha.
So I think now I'm the most vulnerable because I'm putting out. something that kind of has never been done before. Like, I don't think that record that I just made has ever been made, really, where people are playing when somebody's playing that many instruments at one time. And, it's rough, inherently rough, So I feel probably most vulnerable now, but I just want it to be a process. And that's part of the idea about this record too, is like, the first song was the first song that I put out, and the entire thing is the process of me coming to, like, by the last song, I'm like, that's kind of what I wanted to do immediately. But I did all this other stuff in the interim, and I kind of like it. So I'm going to kind of make it all part of the process.
As opposed to being like, all right, now I'm going to start with that last one.
Exactly.
Try to
just
even
discarding all that
10
stuff
other
like
things.
it didn't even count.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that was cool too. Let's all make it part of the thing, So
I think I have a natural tendency to discard stuff too.
Exactly. Yeah, most people do. Especially if you're making music by yourself in your apartment and you have nobody around, It's very hard to do. It's really hard to know how you feel about something until you show it to somebody,
So who are the people that you trust the most when you are trying to decide?
I really only showed stuff to my wife, and she has impeccable taste. Like, she introduced me to a lot of music when we were first dating. Music that was outside of what I was listening to, but I liked,
Like what?
Like, I love Sonic Youth. Like, Sonic Youth is one of my favorite bands of all time because they have good songs. They have a we don't give a shit attitude. They really improvise together like a real band. And it's just natural music. It doesn't feel like it's put on. It's like, and all their records just feel 100% honest, I just love that band. So she kind of introduced me to a lot of stuff that was in that vein, that was kind of newer / older, like a lot more punk music, a lot of like no wave. And stuff that was like, yeah, there's Talking Heads, but here's these other bands that were kind of like that were just like slightly weirder,
Right.
And so, like, I learned a lot from that. But when we go see like improvisers play, and I'm like, well, what did you think of the sax player? And she's like, well, X, Y, and Z, and it's always like exactly what I thought too. Like, she understands improvisation the exact same way I do, and she's also like a really great modern dancer and a great visual artist. So she just kind of understands art. So when I show her something, I feel like I can trust her. So, and she feels the same way about me.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Colectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at colectivo.com.
Earlier, we were discussing two notions. This idea of going all the way with art, and then the idea of not going too deep.
Yeah.
So where do you draw the line personally right now?
I draw the line in that I set rules for myself with this project with 4. No auto-tune, no punches, no overdubs, nothing that the synthesizers that I own currently can generate. So each synthesizer is an analog synthesizer. I only want to use VCO analog synthesizers just because it's another limitation. So that I think just setting guidelines,
Yeah, I find that it makes you more creative when there's limitations.
Totally.
Otherwise, you're just kind of like working in the abyss.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, most of the gigs that I do are film and TV scoring gigs. And one of the first things I try to figure out are like, okay, what are the instruments we're using for the sound of this show or this movie?
Yeah.
And then stick to it.
Yeah, that's great. That seems like the perfect example. Because then it makes the output better also because it's something that's identifiable.
It's identifiable and it helps eliminate a lot of thought. And then you can just kind of come up with melodies and interesting musical ideas.
Yeah, you have a direction.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what like old studios were. It's just like a bunch of instruments, you just play the instruments that are in the studio. Now it's like your laptop has like 80 million instruments on it. So how are you going to use that power? I don't know. Yeah, it's cool though. It's cool. I think like humans are like, I feel like we're all trying to figure out how to deal with option anxiety. Like our our species.
I'm thinking about getting a landline and ditching my cell phone.
Yeah, I mean, getting rid of the cell phone is the first.
Think about it all the time.
Great step. Yeah, I mean, there's. I go on vacation every year for 2 weeks, and there's no cell phone reception and there's no internet, and it's just the best. It's amazing, so great. I mean, that's the other thing is you can place limitations on yourself. Like I won't look at the internet before 3 p.m. or something like that. But it's really hard to stick to those things.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We were talking about only getting there when you die.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any kind of like spiritual practice that you partake in?
Not at all. That's a tricky question. I think I'm spiritual and that I believe in a lot of things like that, like a lot of coincidences. I kind of,
You feel like it's pointing you in
the
universe
things,
is pointing you in a direction.
I can tell when somebody's going to call me, or I can tell when somebody's like about to email me. Like a lot of that stuff happens, where I can just kind of feel like, oh, that person over there. Like I feel like my connections with people are deeper than just a verbal communication or a physical communication.
Are there times when you feel more tuned into that?
No, it's kind of always there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've never really said that out loud, but it happened to me a lot recently. So
what do you feel right now? Like, what do you think's going to happen?
I don't know. I think I'm just imagining. Well, this is the other thing is like is that called manifest destiny or whatever? When you just kind of manifest your destiny.
I don't think that's what it was used as, but
yeah. What was it used as?
That was a way of rationalizing taking land away from Native American people and stuff.
Oh, assholes.
But realizing your vision.
Man, yeah, I think that's like
manifesting.
Oprah's The Secret or whatever. But I think that's like that's kind of what I'm doing.
You subscribe to that. You subscribe to like kind of visualizing something.
I do.
And seeing it happen.
I think actually it 100% is true. Like there's no question. Like I envisioned going to New York and playing with these people, and it happened. And I envisioned once I started doing this project, like, this and this might happen, or, playing gigs around with people, and it happened. It's like that just kind of seems to work because then you have a focus, So the other thing is like writing down your goals too, making like a 1 year.
When do you do that?
I don't think I've ever done it, but I think my friends who are more successful than me have done it. So
what's interesting is I often ask people that come on here if they do that.
Yeah.
And I would say it's about 50-50. And some of the really successful people or ostensibly really successful people do, and some do not. Some people just use their instincts to guide them.
Yeah. Well, for me, I have my drive is so undying that I can't ignore something once it gets in my head. Like I said earlier, I want to make 4 happen, so I'm going to be thinking about that all the time, So I don't need to write it down on a piece of paper. But I think it does help because you make it physical and then it seeps in,
You said you're a pretty optimistic person, but do you ever get caught in negative thought patterns?
Yeah. I mean, I do. But I have like a optimistic view of like humanity.
You do?
Even though it's right now is terrible, it's like the worst ever. But I think there are very good explanations for why it's so bad, and it 100% makes sense to me.
Like what?
Well, I was reading a thing today from, I think it was Dodd or whatever. I don't remember what his first name was, but he was talking about this is exactly what happened after the Great Depression. Was there was tons of racism, there was a lot of politically divisive politics, and a lot of a lack of faith in our country, in the American dream and all that stuff. And this just seems like the exact same thing. It's like people who lost all their faith and they don't know where to put it, so they're all angry. Mm-hmm. The other thing being I was talking about before with the internet, it takes away this facial contact that we're having when we talk. So you can argue with somebody on Facebook and you don't really feel their emotions physically where you're sitting next to them.
Right.
So you can just kind of tell them, you can call them whatever you want and not feel any repercussions emotionally for that.
Yeah, you're basically stewing in your own vitriol.
Yeah, and I think that's addictive. First of all, a lot of people get really into that feeling because it's like
a rage addiction.
Yeah, it's like a drug. It's like coffee or some kind of other upper, But I also think that a lot of people are scared about the influence that the internet can have, and that can make certain people, especially older people, maybe more isolationist because they're scared of how things are going to change. So they want to kind of close off what they've had, you know, like to me, like when the older people who voted for Brexit were interviewed, that's what they talked about. They were just like, I'm scared of change, you know, and like the internet is the biggest change. The cell phone is the biggest change we've seen in our lifetime. It's so not human and nobody talks about it. But I think like we don't know how to deal with it yet, you know?
I mean, I think it is human.
I mean, it's human in that we're just going to evolve until AI takes us over and kills us all. And that's going to happen for sure.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. But I'm still optimistic. But
I think that makes it all the more compelling what you do.
Yeah.
You know, because sooner or later a robot can just do that. Actually, a robot can do what you do now.
I know. Well, I actually told my dad this, and this was totally true. But I've thought to myself that this project is something that the robots might find interesting. You know, like they might be like, we'll spare you because you're really pushing yourself as far as you can go.
You're close to us.
Yeah, or not that you're close to us, but like good job for trying, you know, like pat on the head. Here's your
kind of
cage.
like what we were talking about before with limitations leading to creative output. It's almost like if we were boundless in our abilities, then, you know, the expression might be meaningless. Like what would there be to say?
It would just be beyond our comprehension, you know. Our comprehension is only as far as human comprehension can go with all of our needs, but
our comprehension is kind of like a prism through which we filter the universe and create these colors of, you know, and that's what our human existence is.
Right.
So that's, anyway.
I mean, that we're at the top of the food chain now, so that's all that matters really to anybody, to you know.
As far as we know, we're at the top of the food chain.
Yeah. I mean, in this world, but you know, my dog's idea of what the greatest achievements can be are different than ours, you know.
But
so like
not
an
necessarily any less valid.
No, exactly. I agree. But like whatever, you know, artificial intelligence can do once they surpass us could be amazing, you know.
Well, I think that's a good place to end it.
Okay.
Nate Wood, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.